Never easy being the new kid on the block, but some fighters thrive under the pressure. With speed, power, and aggression, Ortiz wanted to win and win emphatically. This made him stand out as the new prospect that everyone was keeping their eyes on. But this also raised questions for some.
You want to see the other elements. You want to see, obviously, the fortitude, the mental side. You know, when the punch doesn't work, do they wilt? Do they evaporate like a puddle does on a hot July day?
And Virgil was ready to answer those questions by getting in the ring against the former champion, Maurice Hooker, and he had no problem going right after him.
Right hand, right there. That started the onslaught in the exact same time that Jose Carlos Ramirez hurt and knocked out.
And in the end, Ortiz did what great fighters do: close the show. Now the only questions were, what's next and who's next? And Ortiz had no problem letting everyone know what his thoughts were going forward.
Do you believe at 22 years old, you're ready for a Terrence Crawford?
I don't care if I'm ready or not. I want that fight.
But there's a fighter in his way, blocking him from reaching those titles that he so desires. A fighter that's a two-time Olympian, an excellent amateur pedigree, a stablemate to Vasily Lomachenko, a man that's also fought some of the most top-level welterweights.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the two-time Olympian and the current undefeated WBO #1 ranked welterweight world contender, introducing Aegis Mean Machine Kavaliauskas.
He does it.
Oh, nice right hand. He hurts his opponent right here. He's trying to finish the fight, but the round is about to end, and here we go. Knocked out. What a big flurry from Aegis Kavaliauskas there.
You see him trying to stab down to the body. And what did Kavaliauskas do?
Utilizing his amateur career and Olympic experience, Kavaliauskas has a solid fundamentals that he pairs with power that can give any welterweight issues. This even proved to be a challenge for one of the pound-for-pound best with Terrence Crawford. So now the question is, who's going to win? The 23-year-old up-and-coming title contender, or the seasoned veteran who's been in the ring with some of the best names in boxing? I'll give you my full breakdown on this fight prediction on Glove Talk. Welcome to Glove Talk. We're going to be talking about Ortiz versus Kavaliauskas. First, we're going to talk about stats. Then we're going to talk about game plan for each fighter, and then a prediction at the end. So let's get into stats and see how these guys compare. Honestly, there's not a huge difference in a lot of stats, but the big one being age. Kavaliauskas is 33, Ortiz is 23. Height-wise, they're very close. Ortiz is a little bit taller, and reach-wise, Kavaliauskas has a slight reach advantage. Now, best stat to me about this fight that's really stands out: Kavaliauskas has a 75% KO percentage. Very strong, very good KO percentage. But Ortiz has a 100% KO percentage. That tells me this is going to be a fun fight to watch. So let's now get into strategy for each fighter. Let's start with Kavaliauskas. Okay, so let's talk about what I think Kavaliauskas should do in terms of strategy against Ortiz going into this fight. Honestly, I think he needs to basically utilize the same blueprint that he did against Crawford. I think he needs to kind of utilize that more patient Kavaliauskas rather than that more aggressive style that he sometimes shows, where he's on the front foot trying to make things happen. I think that's not going to work well against Ortiz, especially because Ortiz does not have a problem trading one to give one. That I don't think that's a kind of situation you want to be in with Ortiz. So what I think he should do is do similar to Crawford, where he was very patient, finding the kind of moments where he could really shine. A couple punches and strategies I think you should utilize. Number one being his jab. He has a really fast, quick, accurate jab that I think is great for range finding. It's not there for power. It's just purely there to help him find that range, because his big power punch is his right hand. His right hand is fantastic. He utilizes it as a weapon and as a defensive tool. We saw in the Crawford fight especially how accurate it can be and how it can really stop fighters in their tracks. He does a great job counter punching with it, but he also can use it at its full extent as an uppercut or as a just straight right hand as well. He doesn't really loop punches very much, and I think that sometimes works in his favor depending on who he is fighting. The next thing I would mention for him is location, location, location in this fight. He needs to stay off the ropes. That's the big thing. He needs to keep the location of the engagements more towards the center of the ring. The reason I say that is he can go backwards if he wants. That's fine. He can set traps that way. It obviously worked well against Crawford. But if he goes up against the ropes, this is where he's going to have problems. Kavaliauskas is a lot better going forward and backward than he is going side to side. He's not great at lateral movement, and he doesn't have the fastest feet. Ortiz, on the other hand, has wonderful footwork. And if Kavaliauskas gets up against the ropes, Ortiz is going to find angles that are not going to benefit Kavaliauskas in these kind of engagements. So he needs to stay more in the center of the ring. Okay, strategy now for Ortiz going into this fight. The big thing is, for me, when you have a fighter with a lot of various skills and tools that he can utilize, is just to focus on a few key ones to hone in on. And the first thing I would say is his jab. His jab is phenomenal. Unlike Kavaliauskas, where he utilizes it more for range finding, Ortiz is a power jab. I mean, it snaps other fighters' heads back. I think that that's a big plus for him going into this. They have similar reach. I think he can utilize that to make sure to get some early points as well as damage done to Kavaliauskas. The other thing about that is then he can set up some of these other shots that I think work really well in his favor, which are body shots. I love the way he works the body. And when he sets up his body shots and he can slow down Kavaliauskas, he then can use his final weapon, which is his footwork, which I talked about earlier. Using some of that lateral movement, shifting. One of the things I like that I saw against, Vargas in particular, Vargas went up against the ropes and you saw Ortiz change his footwork and change angles rapidly to land some big uppercuts and big power shots. I think that's exactly what he needs to do here against Kavaliauskas. I think that that's something that especially when you're fighting an older fighter, if you can take a little bit of that wind out of their sails and kind of slow them down, especially a fighter that's already not that quick on his feet, I think you can have a lot of success and land some really big shots. So now let's get into prediction for this fight. Okay, so final prediction for this fight. I think, when you look at how these guys are going to engage in this fight, the big thing for Kavaliauskas is that he's not afraid to start fairly quickly. He usually has success early on. We saw in the Crawford fight, if you start slow with him, he will steal rounds from you. So I think if you're Ortiz, make sure that you're warmed up. Make sure you're ready to go when the bell rings. Now, I think Ortiz, generally speaking, can start pretty quick. So I don't think he'll have a problem with that, but it is something to note. I think in this fight, in my opinion, you kind of have a really fantastic fundamental fighter against a fighter that I think is just special, and that is Ortiz. I think Ortiz and Boots Ennis are going to rule the welterweight division in the upcoming future. So I'm going to be leaning towards Ortiz, and I think he's going to get a KO or stoppage in the 7th or 8th round, and I think everyone is going to compare him in his performance to Terrence Crawford, because that's what everyone wants to see next. So that's my prediction. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. We will be live streaming during this fight on Saturday, so make sure to sub to the channel. With that said, we'll talk to you later. Thanks.